Aloha from the big island of Hawaii. I'm Linda with Ohana Thread. Aloha is a greeting in Hawaiian. It means love, affection, peace, compassion, and mercy. Ohana is a word and it means family. So once again, from my Ohana to yours, aloha. This video is about the incredibly easy to make and very versatile pineapple block. The pineapple block originated in what is known as the Americas in the late 1700s, 1800s. The pineapple itself is a fruit that most of us are familiar with. Many people associate it with the state of Hawaii. However, the pineapple actually originated in the part of the world that we know today as Brazil and Paraguay. Legend has it that going back all the way to the 15th century, that when sea captains would return from the Americas, they would take a pineapple, jam it on the gatepost at their home, and that was a symbol to all the neighbors that their house was now open to any guests that wanted to stop by. And so it became a symbol of hospitality. In the 1700s, 1800s, quilters had been making what we know as log cabin blocks. Someone along the way discovered that if they rearranged these blocks, they could come up with a whole new set of patterns that were very, very versatile. So what happened is that they started playing with these blocks and they became known as pineapple blocks. Blocks were originally made by taking a square of fabric, drawing the design on it, and then sewing strips of fabric onto the block, and then that became known as foundation piecing. As time went by, paper became very, very inexpensive, and quilters would take old newspapers, create their blocks by drawing on the newspaper, cutting them out, and sewing on them, and those became known as foundation paper piecing blocks. Today we have all kinds of ways to make a pineapple block. There are all kinds of rulers that are out there. You may have used some of them yourself. One of them many people are familiar with is the pineapple trim tool by Creative Grid. Other ways to make it are by simply taking a PDF file and downloading already created blocks to your printer and then printing them up on paper. You can also purchase blocks that are already printed, and they look like this. I'll be showing you two examples of quilts made with this block. One is a finished 6-inch and the other is a finished 12-inch. When we download our blocks from a PDF file, obviously we need paper. Papers that are available to us are very lightweight copy paper, which most of us have access to. There are also papers that are made specifically for foundation paper piecing. This is one that's made by Carol Doak and comes in two different sizes, an 11.5 by 12, and rather an 8.5 by 11, and an 8.5 by 14. And now something very similar to it that looks and feels just like the Carol Doak paper is this paper called Paper Solvy that is actually water soluble, that's made by Sulky. And so you have the advantage of not having to pull your papers apart when you're done. Another way is to create your block simply by taking a piece of graph paper, a ruler, a pencil, and drawing out your block. And then once your block is exactly the way you want it to look, you take a piece of vellum and then trace your block. Then you remove all the thread from your sewing machine, including your bobbin, and you will spread out your stitch a little bit. And then what you do is you will stitch through the master through the other papers that you've chosen to use, and then now you can just simply use those perforated papers for your block. Now I'm kind of visually impaired, and that's a little difficult for me to do, so I prefer the method of downloading from a PDF file. Now I'm not a particularly creative person, and I noticed that very early on in life, so I found it was very simple to be creative by using techniques that other people had developed. And what it is to take a quilt program And in the quilt program, I can go in and there'll be a library of blocks, and then there are tools that I can use to change those blocks, and there are tools that I can use to actually create my own block. I can then take those blocks, put them on a grid pattern in the computer, create my quilt, and then the pattern can actually be created within it, and the computer will go through the program and allocate how much fabric I need, and all the way to how much backing, border, whatever binding that I may have to use. So that's a very easy way for me to do it. What we're going to do in our next step is we're going to just explore the pineapple block and the many different ways that we can use it and change it by changing the dimensions within the block, the size of the block, and also the colors that we use. And that will be in the next portion. So until then, aloha, and we'll see you then.